Every night since it happened, I have the same nightmare. I know it's not over. I know it can only end one way. As soon as I close my eyes and lie down, I find myself there again. There's the sound behind me again, the methodical, rhythmic splashing of whatever is hunting me, the sound that I know heralds the end. I was a fool to get involved in this, and now I know that I will likely suffer the same fate as all my friends. Why did I try to escape? Why did I think I could get out? Because no one gets out of here alive. I rush forward, my limbs burning, my heart racing. I fall face first into the water, then I wake up. No one believed my story, and why should they? Officially it was just a horrible accident, vacation, big body of water, people drowning, not often, almost a whole group of friends, but people drown, and that's what they told me, and my statements were ignored. The always feigned concerned looks when I told them what had happened were eventually replaced by irritation that I had broached the subject. My friends' relatives even seem intent on writing it off as an accident and insist that I dishonor their memory by trying to make such outrageous statements about what happened, but I know I was there. I know what I saw with my own eyes, and I know it was real. I know it was real because I barely left the house since it happened, and that's after moving to Nevada, the driest state I could think of. I decided to write it all down in case something happened to me. I know no one will believe this story and think I'm crazy, so I can share it with a wider audience, and maybe you'll believe me. Maybe believe why the falling rain itself is a harbinger of my impending death, and why I'll never get caught in the rain while I'm alive, no matter how short it is. I should have heeded that damn sign. My name is Tim, my friends and I went on summer vacation to a swanky lakeside spa and resort far out of town. Have a good time, relax, have a drink or two, get a massage, and maybe hook up with Becky if I play my cards right. We had just rounded a corner and saw a picturesque landscape, which was apparently the road leading to the resort. The area was spectacular, beautiful forests, cool clean air, a crystal blue lake, a little piece of summer paradise. We saw what was supposed to be a resort breaking through a line of trees. Seeing that we were getting close, my friend Adam started the engine of his old van and yelled, "Hold on, it's about to get bumpy!" And then, as if on purpose for them, hit a series of uneven potholes in the road. We were all jolted violently as there was barely enough room in the car for everyone to fit, and Gina slapped Adam's arm, chiding him for driving so carelessly. Well, here we are, I thought excitedly. I was really looking forward to this. We were going to have fun. We all practically piled out of the van and started unpacking what little we had brought with us. Besides me, there was Adam, our friendly but rather self-loving jock and my best friend. There was also Adam's girlfriend Gina, a very feisty and intense person who would probably become the CEO of her own company after graduation. Becky, Adam's sister, was beautiful, kind, a little shy, but sometimes surprised us with how outgoing she could be. And finally, our resident know-it-all, Laura, the smartest person we knew and the only one whose ego was bigger than Adam's. We had originally planned to go to the concert this summer, as we didn't think we could afford something as luxurious as staying at the resort. But someone in Adam's family knew the owners and arranged for us to stay much cheaper than we would have been able to afford otherwise. I was blown away by the sights of the resort, even though I was almost creeped out by the fact that it was far away from civilization. The natural beauty made me forget how far away we were, and how long it would take to get help if we needed it. We walked up to the main building and went inside. Strangely, there was no staff behind the counter where they usually check in. Before anyone could ask a question, Adam rushed forward and started banging the bell on the counter and yelling, "Ring-a-ling-ding, I say room service!" like a jerk. Gina sighed, Becky and Laura giggled, and I rolled my eyes, chuckling a little too. A large man in an overly tight and not-so-seasonal turtleneck came out of the back room and walked behind the counter. "Good afternoon, you must be all." He paused, looking at the paper. "Johnston's party, yes? That's me and my colleague, good lad," Adam said in a bad English accent, and we all had to suppress another groan. Very good, said the concierge. My name is Mr. Dalton and I will be handling your stay at the hotel, as well as Miss Llewellyn who will be on duty for all staff matters. I'm afraid you've caught us out of season. You see, during hurricane season the resort here is almost closed, so some amenities may not be available. I scratched my head in confusion. Wait, did he say hurricane season? But this is a lake, not the ocean. We are a few miles away. What difference does it make what hurricanes or perhaps thunderstorms might cause at Forest Resort? For safety reasons, we also have to have you sign a liability waiver before I give you your room keys. Due to the season, we will make every effort, but we cannot guarantee your safety, especially if you get caught in a storm during some of our activities. Laura shuddered when she heard. Disclaimer: in case of accidental injury or death. What is this place? We need to get out of here, guys. This looks very questionable. Adam, the normal voice of reason, assuming that reason was too much, was already signing his form. He shouted, "Come on guys, it's not that bad. It's probably just some weird insurance thing they make everyone do. Let's get it over with and come on. I want to go swimming." Not wanting to be left out, we all agreed and grudgingly signed waivers. Mr. Dalton smiled, handed us an antique brass key and led us to our suite. It was a luxurious suite, very impressive, with several rooms, exquisite decor, 2 jacuzzis and an impressive view of the forest and nearby Lake Kashur. Everyone was shocked at how beautiful the place was, especially since we had managed to buy it for a low price, although we noted that perhaps it was so cheap because it seemed like we were the only guests here in season. Are people really so afraid of storms so far from the coast? Thought I. I was brought out of my reverie by Becky, who accidentally dropped her bag right beside me as she entered the room. I simultaneously bent down to help her pick it up, and we almost collided heads. We each suppressed a slight chuckle, and she smiled charmingly at me. It made me forget about my joke I had made up to laugh at the situation, and I ended up staring at her dumbly until Adam grabbed my shoulder and said, "Watch where you're going, dude. That big head of yours is a lethal weapon." The girls giggled and I blushed a little and went to my room. The inside of the room was spotlessly clean, only a little dusty and smelled faintly musty, probably due to disuse. I began to stow the few things I had brought with me. I jumped on the bed and stretched out. Lying on the bed, I pulled myself up and looked around the room. I noticed a strange scratch on the wall near the closet. I stood up and looked closely at it. It had been painted over but not restored, so the cut grooves were still visible. What did that do? I wondered. Opening the closet, I found nothing but a hanging robe, a fan, an ironing board, and a small box tucked under the board. What was that? I wondered. Opening the box, I saw a handful of old Polaroid-type photos. They were footprints on the shore by the lake, oddly shaped prints and more photos of prints in the forest mud, a faint watery outline on the road and even on the carpeting, disturbingly similar to the carpet used at the resort in some places. Strange, does someone have a foot fetish? I chuckled to myself, but immediately became alarmed when I saw the panic writing on the back of the last photo, which showed the wet ground with raindrops still falling. The photo was fuzzy, but it showed what could be the outline of a person. The panicked caption read, "Rain!" It was the rain, it was them. What the hell is this, I thought. Maybe someone was peeping at people and got caught, or someone was stalking the last person here. I thought of a few possibilities before I heard Adam yell that dinner was ready. The staff, as it turned out, despite the small number of people, cooked well and we had a big dinner brought to our room which, to our shock, was free. We all had a good time, and Gina, despite her usually upright lifestyle, had brought a rather large assortment of alcohol, so it wasn't long before we were all shit-faced and partying like we were on a real summer vacation. It was getting late and I was about to pass out when Adam and Gina demanded that we all go swimming at the lake since it was so nice and warm outside. We all agreed and changed into our bathing suits. As we were walking to the lake, we noticed a rather prominent sign by the lake with very large print indicating a strange rule. Absolutely no swimming in the rain. What a strange rule, I thought. Laura also looked at the sign and said, "Well, I've heard that you can't eat before swimming, But rain has little bearing on the safety of swimming in an enclosed lake where there are no boats. Besides, Adam said as he licked his finger and held it up, it hasn't rained in these parts for days. He hummed to himself as he heard everyone roll their eyes. As the climate was quite suitable, we got into the water and were soon swimming, singing and having fun. This is how I wished our whole vacation had gone. I never thought that such a catastrophe could happen at this point, when we were all so happy, but soon it all started to happen. I jumped out of the water. Everyone was having a great time, and I thought it would be great to build a big bonfire on the shore, and set to work trying to get materials to build it. But my plan seemed to be thwarted, for there was a great roll of thunder in the sky, and rain began to fall on the lake and shore, pounding down in drops, which dashed my hope of building a bonfire. And that would have been nice, wouldn't it? Oh, we're going to get in trouble. I hope they don't throw us out, said Gina, this time quite drunk and uncharacteristically unserious. Yeah, but our towels will get wet, I thought, and for some reason I remembered that weird picture from the room that mentioned rain. Becky climbed out of the water first, grabbed her towel and walked over to me under a nearby tree where I was trying to build a fire. Kind of bad timing for a thunderstorm? I said rather unconvincingly. Yeah, sure, she replied, trying to guffaw at my attempts at a joke. The awkward pause was broken by a strong, almost floodlight directed toward the water. It illuminated us briefly, and as we squinted we heard two sharp blasts from a whistle, almost like an old steam locomotive. Before we knew what had happened, there was a commotion at the resort, and Mr. Dalton and the mysterious Miss Llewellyn jumped into a big red truck with signal lights on the roof and rumbled out of the parking lot. They drove so fast that I thought they were following us, since we had broken a rule. Just when it looked like they were going to hit us, they swerved and drove down the road, stopping only briefly for Mr. Dalton to roll down his window and say, "Bad luck, my friends. It was nice to meet you. God bless your health, and God knows you'll need it yet." He went on to say, "We left the resort unlocked, but I don't think that will help much. Please accept our deepest apologies. There is little we can do to help. If you can save yourselves, if not, die. We will inform your next of kin. Goodbye." And he rolled up the window and sped away. What the hell does that mean? What's going on? I was panicking, as was Becky, who was looking back and forth while the rain intensified. They just abandoned us? What's going on? She cried. I tried to calm her down, but I didn't know what it was myself. Maybe it was some weird prank. What did we miss? Adam said, climbing out of the water and heading towards us, still partially drunk. The staff had just left. I said they just got up and left. They left. They said they left the resort open but that they couldn't stay there. I don't know what the prank is, but it's not funny, this stunt, the rain, the pictures. I pondered the possibility that maybe Adam had set it all up as a big joke, but seeing the confusion on his and everyone else's faces, I was scared that this could really be happening. What exactly did they say? Laura asked, also approaching. I explained what Becky and I had seen, and then we looked at each other, as if reading each other's minds, and asked in unison, "Where's Gina?" "Hey Gina baby, it's time to get out of the water," Adam yelled, and a roll of thunder almost cut him short seconds after he yelled. "Alright then, if you creepy murderers have to ruin everything, I guess," she muttered as she slowly stepped out of the water, a smirk still playing on her face. As she was getting up and out of the water by the boat launch, we heard a strange sound, as if the splashing footsteps she was making as she came out of the water had somehow doubled in size. It was as if two people were coming out of the water, the second one stepping much heavier and steadier. She must have heard the sound too, as we did, because she stopped briefly, as if checking to see if it was continuing, and after a short delay it continued splash and stomp and then it stopped. Gina turned around and said, "I thought I was going," and she was knocked off her feet to the ground. There was a sickening crunch as she hit her head on the concrete. We saw her twitching and ran to help, but to our horror, she began to be pulled into the water by some invisible force, and water began to leak out of her eyes and mouth as she tried to scream. Adam and I grabbed her arms and tried to pull her back out, But we were knocked down too, and we heard more watery footsteps and a disturbing gurgling sound. Adam was screaming and thrashing, trying with all his might to pull Gina out of the water. He was screaming at her to breathe, and he seemed to be getting some sort of response from her. Her mouth opened again, the water rushed in and around his head. There was a splash and the sound of footsteps, and Adam was thrown back with such force that he was thrown into the lake, and instead of drowning he just floated on the surface, convulsing and obviously drowning despite not being underwater. This sight was enough, and Becky and Laura, screaming louder than I had ever heard in my life, ran toward the resort, and I, coming out of my terror-induced stupor, did the same. We scrambled inside, panicked and gasping in cold terror. I closed the door to the entryway, found the big lock and slid it into place. We huddled around, not knowing what to say. Becky was crying, but it was Laura who broke the silence. "What the fuck just happened in there? It can't be, they're just sinking, over the water. Those footsteps, what's going on?" I didn't know what to say, so I just said, "We need to find a phone to call for help. Maybe there's a landline here with good reception," since we knew the phones in the room hadn't worked for miles before we got here. The rain was getting heavier, and it was starting to pour outside. After poking around the entrance and reception area, we found a phone, but our hope was short-lived. We picked it up, but the line was dead. There was nothing for emergency service, no radio or anything else. We were stuck here alone. While my panic and grief-stricken mind was coming to grips with this revelation, we heard and saw something incredible outside. Over the sound of the heavy rain, we heard heavy, methodical footsteps. They were stomping across the parking lot, splashing jets of water, but they were nowhere to be seen. We held our breath as the stomping footsteps approached the front door and stopped. There was an eerie silence, and for a moment we thought nothing had happened. Then we heard a sound like scratching on the glass, and then a terrible cutting sound. Words began to appear on the glass. We began to shake as we read the words. "Help us, we're drowning. Help us, we're your friends. You can't leave us." Becky sobbed. "No, Adam, no. Is he still alive? We have to help him, my brother, he's dying." We kept her away from the glass, and as we stood in terror of the unseen rider, we heard banging and scraping on the back door, and then there was an eerie gurgling sound from above, like a head being pushed underwater. My heart felt as if it had stopped when we heard footsteps treading wetly on the ground above us. Laura sprinted toward the room, and I sat in a daze, panting. Becky grabbed my arm and shouted, "They've got Adam!" I couldn't answer, and she ran to the window where she said she saw him. She said he was lying on the ground and drowning. She unlocked the door, and the sound of the deadbolt being pulled back brought me back to consciousness. I barely managed to let out a strangled scream. "Becky, no!" Then a cascade of water and a thunderous march of wet footsteps rushed forward and threw her out the door and onto the waterlogged ground outside the door. I saw her startled look. She looked back at me, and her scream was cut short by some invisible hands choking her with that impossible water. I ran, running as fast as I could, trying to get to the room where Laura was. But as I reached the door and frantically tried to open it, I realized I didn't have the key. I screamed for Laura to let me in, but nothing could be heard on the other side of the door. Only footsteps behind me, slow footsteps on the wet floor of the resort. I screamed, lowering my shoulder, and banged on the door once, twice, 3, 4 times, until finally it broke on its hinges and fell forward. The footsteps were behind me. And when I piled into the room, I saw Laura with her hands over her ears, hunched over on the couch, almost catatonic. "Come on!" I shouted. "We have to go!" I pleaded with her, but she was completely unresponsive. Footsteps were heard in the room, slowly making their way to the middle of the room. My heart sank, but I ran, leaving the footsteps to catch up and engulf her, and I'm only thankful I didn't have to hear the screaming. I slammed the door shut, grabbed my bag with my phone, personal belongings and everything else, and locked myself in the closet in my room. I heard footsteps, then knocking, then scratching, then voices. "Help us! We're stuck underwater! Only you can save us! Save us! Help us! We're in pain! There's too much water! We're drowning!" I put my hands over my ears, closed my eyes, and hoped and prayed that it would all be over, that maybe it was just a bad dream. After what seemed like an eternity, the sounds stopped, the voices, the footsteps, the scratching, everything was quiet. I noticed the rain had stopped too. Rain, 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 maybe it had something to do with it, that damn rain. We were swimming in the lake and it started raining. Did those bastards know this could happen? Was that what the cancellations were for? My hands clenched into fists. I couldn't believe it. I redoubled my will and kept fighting, determined to make them at least pay for knowingly risking the lives of my friends and leading almost all of us to our deaths. If the rain stopped, I could leave. I needed to get out of here. I cautiously opened the door and peered outside. Nothing caught my attention. No watery footsteps could be heard anywhere. There was dead silence. I slowly walked across the hall to the living room, fearing what I would see. But Laura was gone. I felt ashamed and guilty that I hadn't tried to grab her and run to the safety of the room. I walked slowly out of the room and downstairs. The wind was still howling and the front doors were wide open, creaking in the wind. It was almost morning. There was a faint light coming into the entryway. I grabbed Adam's keys from his room, and I managed to drive the van away. My eyes raced frantically and I looked around, seeing ominous clouds. But luckily it wasn't raining at the moment. I walked slowly towards the parking lot, my heart racing at the sound of my own footsteps. I tried not to hear behind or in front of me. I approached the van and thought that maybe I would actually make it in time. But the moment I pressed the unlock button on my key fob, there was a roll of thunder from behind the hills, and a few moments later a morning downpour began, and the rain poured down on me and the van. I froze at first, and then exploded with movement, reaching for the door to open it when I saw what was inside and fell backwards in indescribable terror. Adam and Gina, or at least their boneless bodies, were slowly lowered into the front seats of the van, as if they were being moved into position like some kind of demonic puppets. I stood there gaping in horror as Adam's face came closer to me. His mouth opened, water rushed in and began to fill the cabin, splashing out, and the corpses that had been my friends moved to open the doors and a wall of water rushed towards me. They were left lying collapsed on the dashboard. But then there were splashing footsteps and they began to come towards me again. I screamed like a madman and raced into the woods, but the implacable footsteps kept up, no matter how fast I ran. I felt hopeless, my strength was running out, and I was running at the limit of my strength, desperately trying to survive. My whole body ached, I could hardly breathe, but I kept running, knowing that if I stopped, I would die. I thought I could see the main road. Maybe this thing couldn't chase me to a certain point, but as I approached the road, I tripped over my own tired feet and some vines and fell into a ditch by the roadside that was filled with water from a flash flood. I rolled over, spitting out water, screaming, gasping and defiantly defying fate. I stood in water that was up to my waist, looked back in the direction I had come from, heard nothing, breathed a sigh of relief and thought, "Is it really over?" There was a heavy silence. I exhaled and turned to try to get out of the ditch. And then I heard it, just as I had heard it in my nightmares ever since I heard footsteps in the rain. To this day I still don't know how or why I managed to escape when my friends died. I don't know why I'm telling you about it, maybe because of survivor's guilt. Either way, I don't think I'll be gone much longer. I can't avoid the rain forever, it's still out there somewhere. It can follow me wherever I go, and once the rain starts to fall, so do the footsteps. I moved to the driest state in the country, but it's not enough. Even when it's not raining, I hear it in my nightmares. I think of my friends drowning before my eyes. I can still hear their screams. It still seems as real as that faint sound I hear. No, it can't be. I checked the forecast for this morning, but as I write this, I can hear thunder in the distance and perhaps a light pounding of rain. Please excuse me, I need to lock the doors. I hear footsteps and I know I'll have guests coming soon.